Shut up! You're supposed to listen to what I say, shouted Tom as he suddenly slapped me across the face. What? Go cool off outside. And don't bother coming back. It was the first time a man had ever hit me, and I was in shock. Frozen in disbelief. It took a few moments for the pain and fear to set in. I can't take this anymore. I've decided to leave this house and get a divorce. I had been preparing for this day. My name is Jennifer. I'm just your average working wife, 3 years into marriage. Things are looking good this month, I muttered as I checked my bank account. Ever since I was single, I've loved saving money. Growing up in a not-so-rich family, I've always been used to living frugally. Thanks to that, even as an adult, living modestly was never a problem for me. Always spending carefully, saving as much as I could. I've invested those savings into mutual funds and stocks. Having majored in business administration in college, I was quite familiar with economics and how money works. Started investing in college, and so far, it's been smooth sailing. I always dreamt of buying a house where my entire family could live happily. I'm gonna reach my goal soon. I met Tom at the same company I worked at. He was kind and reasonably good-looking, popular among the female employees. Tom and I hit it off when we worked together, and things progressed from dating to marriage smoothly. We don't have any kids yet. Being in our 3rd year of marriage, and considering my age, I kinda want to have kids soon. But with both of us working, our schedules hardly align. Tom's not interested in trying to have a baby. Every time I try to discuss it, he changes the subject. Maybe I should quit my job and make some time for us as a couple. But if Tom doesn't cooperate, I can't just quit. The reason Tom's not interested in having a kid? Our current lifestyle suits him just fine. Though we work at the same company, our departments differ. Tom's department doesn't require overtime, but the pay is the lowest in the company. My department is crucial for the company, so while there's a lot of overtime, the pay is higher. Tom gets home on time and lazes around, playing video games until I get back. But if we have a kid, he won't be able to keep doing that. That's why he's not enthusiastic about starting a family. For now, my focus is on building a home for our potential growing family. That's why I keep saving. I believe that once a child is born, Tom will surely help out. Another thing that bothers me is my mother-in-law. She lives just a 5-minute walk away from our apartment. Right after we got married, my father-in-law's health deteriorated. We were told that he might need care, so we moved closer. But he passed away shortly after due to old age. Ever since then, my mother-in-law has been coming to our house almost every day. It would be fine if she just came by, but she always has something sarcastic to say. I'm home. You're late, aren't you? She mumbles this without making eye contact with me. Good evening. Do you always get home this late? Are you really working, I wonder? Is she going to make sarcastic comments like this today as well? I'm exhausted from work, so I at least want to relax at home. But thanks to my mother-in-law's sarcasm, my home has become a place where I can't feel at ease. So, what are you planning to do for Tom's dinner, since you're getting home at this hour? It's always like this. She only worries about Tom, who probably just lounges around after leaving work on time, and she blames me. I'll start preparing it now. You're going to start making it now? What time do you think it is? While I'm being persistently blamed, Tom continues playing his video game. Where did the kind Tom go? Or is this his true self? In any case, why do I have to prepare meals for a fully grown adult who is not a child? We both work, so if Tom would do the housework when he gets home early, my burden would be significantly lighter. Such thoughts bubble up in my head. My mother-in-law has never worked and is a housewife. She has no intention of understanding the feelings of working women from the start. Besides, if she saw Tom doing housework, she would definitely start helping. Then, I would get sarcastic comments from her again. Well, there's no way Tom is going to do the housework, so this worry is unnecessary. Hey! Jennifer, are you listening? Sorry. I'll start preparing the meal right away. In the end, it seems like it's more peaceful for me to just do everything alone while being criticized. That's all right. I've prepared everything and already fed Tom. Oh. I see. Thank you. Of course, she hasn't prepared anything for me. I just need to prepare my own meal, so that's fine, I guess. Sadly, this has become such a usual thing that I can think like this. While I'm preparing dinner in the kitchen, I hear this conversation. Hey, Tom. I have a dinner party with my friends coming up. It's at that new French restaurant, so the membership fee is around $200, but could you cover it for me? Yeah. And, I want to get some new clothes and go to the salon, so could you give me an additional $500? Okay, got it. Tom responds easily without taking his eyes off his game. $500 for a meal with friends. What kind of sense of money does she have? Then, Tom rummages through my purse without asking, takes out $500, and hands it to his mother. Thanks, Tom. You're a lifesaver. She thanks only Tom and puts the money in her wallet. I'm stunned. What have these people just done? Can they not see me? When my mother-in-law goes to the bathroom, I go up to Tom and confront him. Why are you taking money out of my wallet? I had no choice, I didn't have any cash on me. That doesn't mean you can just take cash out of someone else's wallet. And my mother-in-law, who accepts the money, is just as bad. If you can't give her the money yourself, you should have said no. We don't have that kind of money to spare. Tom and I are arguing when my mother-in-law comes back. What happened? Is something wrong? When my mother-in-law asks this, I'm about to tell her the truth when Tom interrupts me. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong? Does Tom not understand how hard it is to pull $500 out of our budget? I manage our finances. Since my income is higher, I pay for everything, from rent to living expenses, from my account. Tom doesn't contribute his salary, he uses it all for his allowance. And he spends it all on games, gambling, all on entertainment. I asked him to at least contribute to the living expenses, but he just dodged the issue. Just last month, I know he gave his mother $500 because she said she wanted to buy clothes and a bag. The month before that, it was for a kimono, cosmetics, salon, and spa expenses. When I think about it, he's been giving her $500 every month. As I'm stewing in my thoughts, my mother-in-law says, I heard there seemed to be a dispute about money. That's why I came by. Don't make a fuss just because I'm offering some pocket money. Doing a good deed for your parents won't bite you back. You'd be pleased if your elderly parents were well taken care of, right? My mother-in-law doesn't seem to be fazed at all. The whole family has a warped sense of money. No matter how much we save, it just ends up being spent on my mother-in-law's extravagant expenses. Determined, I thought today has to be the day, and with all the courage I could muster, I spoke up to her. We really don't have the extra money. To be honest, supporting you with $500 every month is really hard on us. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law let out a deep sigh. You see, this money is for socializing expenses. Buying new clothes and dining out with the neighbors is an important part of socializing, isn't it? If it's just for chatting with the neighbors, isn't a coffee shop good enough? Why does it always have to be a fancy French restaurant or a high-end inn? She's always updating her wardrobe for every occasion and picking up the tab for everyone, such a show-off. But it's not like she's liked by everyone, in fact, she's just being taken advantage of. You, on the other hand, hardly connect with the neighbors. I'm doing all this networking for you. She's the one choosing to do all this, I didn't ask her to. Being stingy with socializing expenses, now that's just miserly. You're not skimping on Tom's socializing budget too, are you? Jennifer is quite a penny pincher, you know. I always have a hard time because she skimps on the drinking and gambling expenses. Tom's drinking parties and gambling are not social expenses, they are purely for entertainment. Being stingy about spending money for socializing with colleagues. Tom will never get promoted at this rate. Poor thing. Jennifer, you really need to review your household budget. Tom and his mother-in-law say whatever they please. Today was just dreadful again. Maybe she felt relief after taking the money and saying what she wanted to say. But as she headed to the exit, she glared at me again. If you want to get divorced, Tom, I think it's fine anytime. Your room is still there, just as you left it. You can come back anytime. All right. Thanks, Mom. With a rough swing, she closed the door behind her and left. What was that all about just now? When I turned around, Tom had already started playing his video game again. I was so angry, I laid into him. Why did you give her $500? Month after month, where is that money even coming from? Without stopping his game, Tom just ignored what I was saying. I stood in front of the TV and said to Tom, "Are you even listening? I'm asking you what you're thinking." Unable to see the TV, Tom answered with a bothered look on his face. What's the big deal? It's just $500. Stop being so stingy. Do you have any idea how hard it is to take out $500 from our household budget? But like Mom said, it's social expenses, so it's a necessary expense. That's not a necessary expense at all. Why does it cost $500 just to talk to the neighbors? Aren't all the meals being paid by your mom? This is ridiculous. No matter how desperately I talked, Tom just wouldn't listen. Whether he found it annoying or just wanted to get back to his game, he didn't even try to understand what I was saying. Also, are you considering getting divorced? If you're going to be that cheeky, I have my own thoughts on the matter. Tom didn't deny it. He was actually considering divorce. Can you just move? I want to play my game. Saying that, he brushed me aside with a gesture and started his game again. Maybe it's hopeless. Maybe getting a divorce is for the best. But I just can't make that decision, knowing the kind Tom I used to know. And then, an incident occurred. On my way home from work, I stopped by the local supermarket. I usually pay with cash, but I didn't have enough on me today, so I decided to pay with my credit card. That's when the cashier gave me an awkward look. "Ma'am, it seems like this card can't be used." Huh? Why's that? It seems you've reached your limit. What? A bad feeling washed over me. I hurried home. Tom! Tom, are you here? There was no response from Tom. Then, I saw Tom's bag on the floor, and papers were scattered everywhere. What is this? I looked at the papers, and they were bills for numerous credit cards. These credit cards were family cards, and the account was linked to mine. Tom is bad with money management, often maxing out his credit cards. That's why his cards are maxed out, and he can't use them anymore. Since then, the only credit card Tom has is this family card. I quickly looked through the bills and saw a list of things I didn't recognize. Clothes, bags, shoes, high-end sushi, French cuisine, all the bills were for luxury items. The total amount for all the bills was an astounding $50,000. I was stunned and froze on the spot. I checked the number of zeros multiple times to make sure, but there was no mistake. And then Tom and his mother arrived. What's this about the credit card being charged $50,000? Did you use this? Yeah, I used it. What do you mean by that? Mom asked me to go shopping with her and out to meals. Why did you use this card? It can't be helped, my cards are unusable. It's fine, isn't it? This is just filial piety. This money is going to be withdrawn from my account, you know? My account? We're married, so it's not just your account, right? I collapsed on the spot, my knees giving out beneath me. All the money I had worked so hard to save up was used up so easily. Jennifer, you can't say things like my money when it comes to our shared finances as a married couple. As always, my mother-in-law showed no sign of remorse. Jennifer, you're lying about not being able to give me money even though you have it. I wonder just how greedy you can be. Without any apology, Tom's blatant defiance is driving me to the brink of rage. All the feelings I've been holding back are now surging up, exploding all at once. Don't mess with me. This is the savings I worked so hard for since before I was married. Give it back to me. Hey, what are you talking about? What's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. That's how marriage works, right? That's right. Instead of you showing gratitude to my parents, I'm doing it on your behalf. You should be more thankful to me. And to think, he's been receiving $500 a month for pocket money, and he even secretly used a credit card behind my back. This account even includes the money I saved up before I was married. Using it without asking is no different than stealing. Give it back to me. Hey, cut it out. Who are you calling a thief? Angered by the word thief, Tom responds irritably. This credit card is a family card. I can use it however I want since I'm part of the family. That's right. Tom has really been doing a lot for me. In fact, you didn't notice the $50,000 bill until it came, right? So there's no problem. The account linked to the credit card wasn't one I used regularly, so I didn't notice right away. But that doesn't mean this situation is acceptable at all. That's not the point. Give me back my money. Unable to contain my anger, I burst into tears and plead with him. Shut up. You're my wife, so you should just listen to what I say. You should be grateful I even married someone like you. With that, Tom suddenly slapped me across the face. What? Cool off outside. And don't bother coming back. This is the first time I've ever been hit by a man, and I'm in shock. I was so surprised that I couldn't move. A few moments later, the pain and fear hit me. I can't take it anymore. I finally decided to divorce him and leave this house. That night, I meticulously planned my next steps and went to bed. The next morning, Tom nonchalantly placed a single piece of paper in front of me. It was a divorce form. And Tom's section was already filled out. What? From now on, if you complain about me, we're getting divorced. If you don't want a divorce, then don't talk back to me. I'll handle the money from now on. With that, Tom grabbed the bank book and left for work. I couldn't believe how easily I had gotten the divorce form, which I thought would be the hardest part. Does he really think I still want to be with him after all he's done? Does he think the word divorce scares me? I realized that Tom's head is in the clouds. But for me, this is perfect. I'll gladly use this divorce form. All my love for Tom has completely disappeared. And then there's this. The investment trusts and stocks I've been working on since before I was married. There haven't been any major losses, and everything is going smoothly. I've reached a point where I can live off the returns alone. And with just the stock earnings, I've managed to save around $500,000. Of course, Tom doesn't know about this money, because it's in a different bank account. I was worried about keeping such a large sum of money in one account, so I have several. The bank book that Tom took is just one of them. I filled out my section of the divorce form. With the divorce form in hand, I quickly packed my bags and left the house. Then I went to the office and successfully submitted the divorce form. For the time being, I took refuge at my parents' house. Seeing me show up with a ton of luggage, my surprised parents listened as I explained the situation. While enjoying a leisurely stay at my parents' house, I started checking real estate listings. Commuting from my parents' house is too far, so I need to find a new place to live soon. Then, while browsing on my smartphone, I stumbled upon an interesting listing. A newly built house near the station. A perfect 15-minute walk from work. I immediately went to the real estate agency to inquire. The house is currently under construction and is expected to be completed in 2 months. The interior work hasn't started yet, so they said they can accommodate some of my requests. The location is great, and there are many interested buyers. I decided on the spot to buy the house and even completed the payment that day. I stayed at my parents' house while preparing for the move, and everything went smoothly. Hey, Jennifer. One day, out of the blue, my ex-husband spoke to me at the office. I had been so thrilled with the hustle and bustle since deciding on our new home that I had completely forgotten about him. Where the hell are you? Why aren't you answering your phone? I had received dozens, if not hundreds, of calls from Tom, but I had been ignoring them all along. And what about the divorce papers? I couldn't believe it and checked with the office, and they told me it's already been submitted. What the hell is going on? What do you mean, what's going on? You're the one who shoved those divorce papers at me. I just did as you told me to. Don't screw with me. There's no way they would accept divorce papers submitted without my consent. Tom had handed me the divorce papers himself. How selfish can he be? A divorce application submitted without my agreement won't be accepted. If I sue, you'll be charged with forgery. Serves you right. But you gave them to me, Tom. Your section is filled out by you. Even though I explained this, Tom wouldn't listen. I won't accept it. Employees passing by turned around at Tom's loud yelling inside the office. The divorce is already finalized. I've already reported it to the company. You should properly report it to your boss as well. I tried to distance myself from Tom. Then, he grabbed my arm tightly. I won't accept it, you hear me? I won't let you have it your way. You can't escape from me, he said in a low voice, and then he left. The new home was wonderful. My favorite room, furniture, and appliances. Being surrounded by my favorites filled my heart in ways I had forgotten since I used to dread going home. Being at home truly gives me peace of mind. Then, the doorbell rang. I looked at the monitor. But no one was there. Who is it? No answer. Suspicious, I looked around from the balcony. But no one was there. The next day, the company was closed, so I was eager to get started early in the morning. I'm going to clean up the house today. I was pumped up when I heard a loud knock on the door. Wondering what it was, I went outside, and there she was, my mother-in-law. To be precise, my former mother-in-law. What do you want? I asked. It's not a matter of what do you want. What are you thinking, moving out without discussing it with a family? She scolded. Huh? Had Tom not told his mom about us? Before that, how did she know where this house was? Then I remembered the doorbell ringing last night. Tom must have followed me and figured out my address. Didn't Tom tell you? We're divorced, I informed her. This is just a lover's quarrel. Withdraw the divorce right now, she insisted. If you don't withdraw it, I'll sue you for forging documents. Tom chimed in, out of nowhere. He was still saying such things? Why would that be the case? You are the one who wrote it, right? I was losing my patience. While Tom and I were talking, his mom had let herself into my house and was looking around. Well, this is a big house. Is it a duplex? With this size, maybe I could move in. She mused. Hey! Don't just enter without asking. I protested. Oh my, listen to you. Accusing your parent of being a thief. She retorted, unabashed. Tom and his mom were speaking as if they could say whatever they wanted. I kept my emotions in check and spoke calmly. The divorce is finalized. The divorce papers were indeed written by Tom. If you still insist on suing for document forgery, then let's settle this in court with lawyers. I proposed. Lawyers, court. These words seemed to finally make her grasp the situation. She looked unsettled but then said, well, if you two are getting divorced, this house belongs to Tom, right? He and I will live here. I was astounded. She had no understanding of Tom at all. Tom, with his low income and suspended credit cards, there's no way he could afford a house. This house is in my name. I bought it with my savings, I clarified. Hey! What do you mean by that? How can you afford to buy a house? Tom finally reacted. I told them both that I bought the house with the money I made from investments. Realizing that the house was not in Tom's name, his mother became furious. What is this all about? What are we supposed to do now? She demanded. There was a reason she was panicking. Upon hearing about the new house from Tom, she had sold the house they were living in. I was amazed that she could make such a bold move without even discussing living together with me. Well, even if she had asked, I wouldn't have agreed to live together. Fine, let's settle this in court. I will make sure to get that divorce withdrawn. I won't accept this divorce, she declared, storming off with Tom. Even if they did take this to court, the divorce papers were unmistakably written by Tom. And does he even have the money to hire a lawyer? I doubt it. Well, if I do get sued, I'll think about it then. Afterward, I continued to live peacefully alone in my home. A while passed without any issues, so I thought the matter was settled. However, Tom started coming to my house repeatedly, asking to get back together. Jennifer, I'm sorry for everything. Let's start over. He pleaded. I couldn't believe it. After everything he had said to me. Not knowing when Tom might lose his temper, I ignored all his calls and visits. But his actions escalated. Hey! You've got some nerve ignoring me. I'll break this window if you don't come out right now. He threatened. It was becoming more and more like harassment. He even started stalking me at work, calling incessantly, making it impossible for me to do my job. He would sometimes wait for me at the exit of my workplace or near my house. Scared, I started going home with a friend and asked my boss for help. It had gotten to a point where it was affecting my daily life, so I decided to consult the police. Subsequently, the police started patrolling around my home twice a day. During one of these patrols, they caught my ex-husband yelling outside my new house, and he was arrested on the spot. Stalking, harassment, and threats. He was found guilty of these criminal acts and was arrested. Of course, he was also fired from his job. He must be serving his time in prison by now. The rumor that my ex-mother-in-law's son had been arrested for making threats spread quickly through the neighborhood. My former mother-in-law, who used to socialize with the neighbors, couldn't even step outside her house anymore, so she moved far away. According to the grapevine, she now lives alone in a small, old, wooden apartment because she doesn't have her own house to return to. Finally free from all of this, I immediately contacted my parents. They had taken care of me back in the countryside, so I asked them if they wanted to live together in my new house, and they were delighted to join me. We weren't exactly wealthy, but they raised me with care. Now I finally have the chance to do something kind for my parents, and it makes me happy. Next, I'd like to invite my friends over for a barbecue or have drinks at my place. I've lived my life thinking that I just needed to endure things, but from now on, I want to take better care of myself and cherish every day. How's that? Feels cool and refreshing, right? You were all sweaty anyway, and isn't it nice that the beer smell covers up the sweat? While I'm taking a break from cooking, Bob, all sweaty, splashes beer on me, grinning cheekily. Catherine, what are you up to? Did you spill something again? Hearing the commotion, my mother-in-law comes into the kitchen, blaming me. No! Bob splashed beer on me! To my own surprise, I retort quite loudly. Seeing my reaction, Bob keeps up his cheeky grin and plays innocent. What are you talking about? He wouldn't do that, would he? Even though my mother-in-law seems to know the truth, she defends Bob. The mix of frustration and shock makes me burst into tears right there. What the hell is going on here? Hearing my cry, my father-in-law rushes in. That's enough. You're no son of mine. Get out, now. Chastised by my father-in-law, Bob, overwhelmed, runs out of the house. Not knowing what might happen next. My name is Catherine. I'm a 49-year-old housewife. I live with Bob, my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law. All four of us share the family home. Bob is 55 and works as a salesman. He's apparently a department head at his company, and when he's home, he just can't stop complaining. Mostly to my mother-in-law, about his colleagues and superiors. The way my mother-in-law listens to Bob's rants, she seems to genuinely pity him, always taking his side, no matter how unreasonable his stories are. He has been spoiled like this since childhood, which explains his current self-centeredness. I never realized it until I started living in Bob's family home, but since living with my mother-in-law, I've begun to question Bob's character. Maybe out of jealousy, thinking her precious son was taken away, my mother-in-law began picking on me right after I moved in. Listen, Catherine, you're being allowed to stay at home, so you better make sure you do all the chores perfectly. Always looking down on me, My mother-in-law watches my every move, eagerly pointing out any little mistake. Her favorite phrase to me is, "You must have been so spoiled growing up." Though she herself spoils her son like crazy without realizing the irony. There was a reason my mother-in-law started saying these things to me. This story goes back to when I was a child. I was born the only daughter of a businessman and a stay-at-home mom. Due to our wealthy background, our lifestyle was luxurious. Anything I wanted was bought for me, and I could eat whatever and whenever. Living like this from a young age, I naturally became larger than my peers. Yet, in the midst of all these luxuries, I never cared about my appearance. It wasn't until 7th grade that I became self-conscious about my body. Besides the packed lunch my mom made, I would also bring extra pastries from the convenience store every day. "Hey, today you bought 3 pastries, huh?" I noticed classmates glancing at me and whispering, giggling. Suddenly, all those things I hadn't cared about became a source of embarrassment. The packed rice box, all the fried food, and the daily pastries. That was when I first realized how abnormal it all was. Although my mom never commented, I was visibly overweight, getting winded even from a short run. One day, I took a hard look at myself in the mirror. The price I paid for being pampered. I overheard some classmates talking that day, and I realized I had probably been made fun of for a long time. I started to reconsider and change my life. Not eating out of mere desire, keeping up with exercise, and helping around the house without relying on my parents. Even though I was just a kid, by sticking to these rules, I took my time and successfully achieved a healthy body and mind. My mom and dad were like, "You don't have to push yourself so hard." But they were moved by my efforts and felt ashamed of their own indulgence. I felt grateful to my parents and started working hard on my own. I focused on my studies and got into a top-tier university, looking forward to my future. However, when it was time to start job hunting, I suddenly wondered what I really wanted to do with my life. With these doubts, I kinda just took the civil service exam and ended up working for the local city hall in Nebraska. After working there for a while, I met Bob, who would become my husband, and we started dating. We dated for about 3 years before getting married. Bob was insistent that I quit my job and become a stay-at-home wife. I wondered, is this what typical happiness looks like? Marrying the person you love and being a housewife? I agreed to quit my job and started living with Bob. However, about 6 months into our marriage, Bob proposed moving to his parents' house. Turned out, his dad was seriously ill and needed care. He said he wanted to be close and take care of his dad, and I couldn't refuse his sincere request. Without giving it much thought, I was touched by Bob's kindness and agreed to move in. But this decision turned out to be a mistake. Living with his mother, Bob became like a completely different person. He prioritized his mother over me and followed whatever she said. They both teamed up and badmouthed me. Before we got married, I had shown Bob some pictures from my childhood as a sort of fun thing. He had complimented me, saying I had worked hard to look so good, but now he used those pictures to mock me. He told his mother about my pampered upbringing, and they made it into a laughing matter. Given all this, his mother perceived me as a spoiled princess. It's partly my fault for not thinking things through, but once we moved in, taking care of Bob's father became my responsibility. Initially, he was still of working age but became physically ill, making his daily life challenging. His mother didn't want to take care of him and schemed with Bob to have me move in and take on the caregiving role. Unlike Bob and his mother, his father was a gentle soul, always with a smile on his face. He felt bad for me being thrust into a caregiving role at a young age and always tried to make things easier. He noticed the harassment from his wife but felt he couldn't speak up due to his condition. Seeing him like this made me feel really bad for him. While my relationship with Bob worsened, I grew closer to his father. Despite his physical limitations, he was knowledgeable and taught me tips about cooking and cleaning. When Bob and his mother weren't around, he'd even talk about how his wife would try to control things or share funny stories from Bob's childhood. I never realized until I began living in my childhood home, but Bob is what you'd call a mama's boy. According to my father-in-law, John, it's because his wife, Susan, coddled Bob too much when he was little. Even though they've often called me too soft, they don't seem to recognize it in themselves. John was very busy with his work when he was younger, leaving most of the child-rearing to Susan. Because of that, he didn't have much time to play with Bob, but he bought him any toy he wanted. I did it out of guilt, but it has led to the way he is now. Having grown up in a similar environment, the story stung, but Bob has lived his life taking such kindness for granted. Susan adored Bob to a fault. When he'd come home with a scratch from school, she'd even barge into the school, yelling. Despite teachers explaining that he just fell and scraped himself, she would relentlessly investigate to confirm if it was truly an accidental scratch. Understandably, with incidents like these, Bob became quite unpopular at school. However, with every toy or game he wanted waiting for him at home, he didn't seem to mind. He believes that if I ever have a problem, Mom will help me out, a mindset that has persisted and contributed to his arrogant attitude today. Though I found many of these stories laughably absurd, living with John has made daily life tolerable. However, since moving into my in-laws' house, the stress and pressure have led me to eat more. I've been gaining weight rapidly, and though I'm not back to my old size, I'm steadily getting there. Both Susan and Bob noticed my change and commented snidely. Even though you're home all day, you're eating too much. If I ever tried to explain myself, Bob would fly into a rage and say, "You should take a lesson from Mom. What stress? What pressure? Don't you dare mention such things in front of my mother. You should be more considerate of her." Whenever Bob felt I was speaking ill of Susan, he would berate me furiously. His constant criticism and harsh words only exacerbated my weight gain. "John, I'm so sorry. With me gaining so much, it must be hard for you to walk through the hallway." Initially, when helping John walk, I would stand beside him. But with my weight gain, I had to assist him from the front in the narrow corridor. "You don't have to worry about that. Thank you for always helping," John would reply, not blaming me at all. However, I indeed felt a sense of urgency regarding my situation. Then one day, as I was preparing dinner as usual, I finished cooking and was in the process of moving the dishes to the dining table. Both Bob and Susan were at home that day, and as usual, neither lifted a finger to help. In my hurry to serve dinner, I tripped and fell, spilling the dishes all over the floor. "Oh no!" With a loud crash, the dish I was holding fell to the floor. I hurriedly tried to gather up the scattered food from the floor. "What on earth are you doing?" Bob exclaimed, more concerned about the messy floor than me. "Oh dear, do you need to start over? Dinner's supposed to be at 6 o'clock. Susan complained from her seat, not moving an inch. "It's because you've put on so much weight that you trip over nothing. It's embarrassing," Bob snapped, then stormed off to the living room where Susan was waiting. Fighting back tears, I began cleaning up the mess. The lack of concern from Bob was heart-wrenching. Though I was devastated by their harsh words and attitudes, I didn't want to hear any more from them. Thankfully, no dishes were broken, but I had to redo the meal I had worked hard on. It happened because I was rushing, not because of my weight. Unable to voice my feelings, I found myself alone, cleaning up the food that had scattered across the floor. Even though Bob and Susan continued to make snide remarks about dinner being late, once John realized what had happened, he stepped in and thankfully, the situation was diffused. Afterwards, John repeatedly apologized to me, constantly checking if I was hurt or if there was anything he could do to help. John, who always cared for me, had his birthday approaching that weekend. Every year, I make a point to prepare a slightly more lavish dish than usual to celebrate. Whenever I'd ask if he wanted something specific, he'd always say, "You cook delicious meals for me every day. I can't be so cheeky as to ask for more." This was a stark contrast to Bob and Susan, who never held back, always wanting cakes from famous bakeries or a fancy steak for their birthdays. Just the thought of having to reserve cakes and meals months in advance for these two gave me an uneasy feeling in my stomach. From our usual conversations, I had picked up on John's favorites and began preparations for his birthday. On the day, I started cooking earlier than usual. It was nearing the end of summer, but with fried dishes on the menu, the kitchen felt like a sauna. To ensure my sweat didn't drip into the dishes, I wrapped a towel around my neck and proceeded with extreme caution. I wonder if I'm sweating this much because I've gained weight. With these thoughts, I steadily finished the dishes. I plated the prepared dishes, and all that was left was to wait for my husband's return. Completely drenched in sweat, I felt incredibly uncomfortable. After a short rest, I thought of changing my clothes. As I sat down with a cold iced tea from the fridge, I heard the front door open and realized Bob had come home. Bob walked straight into the kitchen, shot me a glance, and opened the fridge. "Why are you sweating so much just from cooking?" Fetching a beer from the fridge, Bob made a sarcastic remark. I tried to ignore the comment, sipping my iced tea, but in the very next moment, just as Bob opened his can of beer and I thought he was out of my sight, the next moment happened. Ah! Suddenly, a cold liquid was poured over me from behind. I could feel the cold fluid running down from my hair and across my upper body. Immediately, I realized from its smell that I had been drenched in beer. As I slowly turned around, there was Bob, holding a can of beer, grinning at me. "How's that? Feels refreshing, doesn't it?" Frozen, I just stared at Bob, who continued to smirk. "At least the smell of your sweat will be replaced by the beer now, huh?" A few seconds later, Susan rushed into the kitchen after hearing my scream. "Catherine, what happened? Did you spill something again?" Desperately, I tried to explain to her. "No! Bob poured beer over me!" I raised my voice, louder than I had ever before. Seeing this, Bob, still with that smirk, played dumb. "Bob wouldn't do such a thing, right? Susan seemed to realize the truth, but chose to defend Bob. "What the hell is going on?" Tears of frustration streaming down my face, I saw John slowly making his way into the kitchen, leaning heavily on his walking stick. Instead of his usual calm demeanor, John's face was contorted with anger. His usually calm face now distorted with anger, John glared at Bob and Susan. "Bob, did you pour beer on Catherine?" Confronted by John, Bob responded with a cheeky tone. "Dad, you don't have to be so mad. It was just a small joke. Enough. I didn't raise you to be like this. Shame on you." Bob's face paled at the scolding from John, something none of us had ever seen before. "Why are you being so harsh? I was just..." Bob, who had never been scolded by his parents before, was clearly deeply shocked. "You! That's no way to speak." Immediately, Susan rushes to comfort Bob. "You better knock it off too." With a sharp rebuke from John, Susan freezes on the spot. From the shock, Bob drops the beer can he was holding and looks like he's about to cry. Seeing Bob like that, I felt truly sorry. "Enough! Enough!" Suddenly, with those words, Bob quickly leaves the kitchen. The next moment, the front door is heard opening and closing swiftly. Seems like he's stormed out of the house. "Bob! What have you done?" Susan shows signs of rushing after him but gives up after a stern look from John. "Just let him be. Leave him alone." Overwhelmed with shock, Susan leaves the kitchen too. "Catherine, I'm truly sorry for all this. Are you hurt?" While using his walking stick, John offers me a fresh towel, noticing I'm drenched. "I'm sorry. Because of me, both Susan and Bob." For some reason, all that came out of my mouth were words of apology. Seeing me like this, John kindly reassures me and starts cleaning the messy kitchen. Normally, I wouldn't let John, with his physical challenges, do any of this. But this time, I let him take care of it out of gratitude. Neither Susan nor Bob showed up for the rest of the day. After cleaning the kitchen, John and I celebrated a quiet birthday and had dinner together. John repeatedly apologized during dinner and enjoyed the meal I prepared. Though I was concerned about Bob's whereabouts, given what had just transpired, I decided to let him be. The next morning, just a bit past 7 o'clock. "Excuse me." An officer brings Bob home, his face swollen and red. Seeing him, Susan looks like she's about to faint. This morning, we found him lying on the grass in a park. From what the officer explained, Bob had been drinking at a nearby park and passed out. When they approached him, his face was so swollen that they immediately called for help. Seems like a severe insect bite. Having spent the night drinking outdoors during the summer, it's no wonder he got bit. Some of the swollen areas look worse than just mosquito bites. I expressed deep gratitude to the officer who had taken care of Bob and welcomed him inside.
Bob, look at your face. We need to get you to a hospital. And Catherine, this is your fault. What if it doesn't get better?
Bob, still sulking, just stares at Susan as she scolds me.
Seriously, you're always complaining and doing nothing. And all this because Bob just pointed that out a little.
Susan, visibly upset, confronts me with a red face.
Have you two not learned your lesson?
Watching our exchange, John says with a hint of exasperation.
Bob is one thing, but you too, Susan. Pushing all the caretaking on Catherine and then complaining.
John then goes on to express appreciation for my usual efforts. For a while, Bob, with his swollen face, listens to John but eventually bursts out in anger.
That's enough! Dad, you don't understand anything! Yeah, ever since you became like this, everything has been messed up.
Now, Susan joins in, blaming John.
Both of you, stop it! Aren't you ashamed? Do you not realize how sorry and sad John feels for both of you?
Unable to hold back, I raise my voice.
People like you don't have the right to criticize others when you can't even understand such simple things.
As I say this, Bob, losing his temper, charges at me.
Who are you talking to like that?
Bob pushes me, and I fall backward.
Bob.
Seeing this, John lets out a piercing scream. Both Bob and Susan snap back to reality and freeze in place upon witnessing John's anger.
Catherine, can you stand up? Are you okay?
John, showing concern for me, pulled his cell phone out of his jeans pocket. Yes. My son Bob became violent, and someone got hurt. From the conversation, it was clear whom John was calling. After hanging up the phone, John glared at Bob and scolded him even more.
Bob, what you did is unforgivable. You need to pay for your actions. What the? Dad, what are you thinking? Are you out of your mind?
Panicking, Bob clung to Susan, his face on the verge of tears.
Mom, what's gonna happen to me? Help me, do something.
Neither Bob nor Susan could possibly understand how I felt watching Bob's pitiful state. After a while, the police officer who had escorted Bob earlier returned. Facing the pressure of John's account and the officer's presence, both Bob and Susan honestly described what had occurred earlier. Bob, still teary-eyed as he explained, and the officer listening to him was visibly irritated by the aggressor's behavior. The officer, heeding John's insistence, declared that he was gonna take Bob to the police station right then. I couldn't believe the turn of events and was unable to act, but I confided everything to the female officer who was with us. Both Bob and Susan broke down crying, repeatedly apologizing. Fortunately, I only had a minor bump on my head, but it was decided to take me to the hospital just in case. The officer seemed unsure of how to handle a family dispute, but due to John's firm stance, informed us they would treat it as an assault case. Later, after being checked at the hospital and returning, John warmly greeted me.
Were you okay? I'm truly sorry for all that's happened.
Even though it was all Bob's fault, John apologized as if he himself had caused me harm. Susan had gone to the police station to provide a statement, being there with Bob for questioning. While I was at the hospital, John explained what had transpired and continued.
Catherine, I know it's not my place, but you should leave Bob. Being with a man like him will ruin your life. Forget about us and do what's best for you.
I had been contemplating my future for some time, but John's unexpected suggestion took me by surprise.
He might reflect on his actions now, but I won't let him trouble you any further. You gotta live your own life.
Sensing my emotions, John added.
I'm utterly disappointed in Susan. I've decided to move to a retirement community, so I'll be fine.
It seems he has no intention of divorcing Susan but doesn't want to live with her or Bob any longer. Hearing John's words, years of pent-up feelings overflowed, and I couldn't stop crying for a while. After that, I formally sued Bob. My claim was recognized, and I was granted a divorce and alimony. Furthermore, Bob was found guilty of assaulting me. Susan was shocked by Bob's arrest and the fact that John had left the house. John was thoughtful enough to consider my future and gave me some money for my immediate expenses, separate from the alimony. I thanked John many times for supporting me throughout, and that marked the end of my married life. A few months after divorcing Bob, I rented a new apartment and started working. Having lived with John, I became interested in caregiving. I began studying for the necessary certification and put a lot of effort into job hunting. Then, for my job, I also started eating better and worked hard to lose weight. I might not be back to my old self, but I've managed to get back into shape. Living with John helped a lot, and I quickly adapted to my job. With a lighter body, I moved around more easily and began to go out more on weekends. I was freed from a life where I lived in fear of Susan and Bob, always trying to gauge their moods. I sometimes missed the long years of marriage, but new encounters came my way. I started a cooking class as a hobby and got along with a like-minded man. Though I had traumatic memories from my life with Bob, I'm thinking of getting closer to him gradually. I had such encounters, but I regularly visit John at his care facility. John has always been concerned about me, and he was happy for me when I got a new job and met someone new. John would tell me,
"You can forget about me now."
But he's not like Bob or Susan. I deeply respect John as an individual. He chose to live separately from his beloved wife and imposed strict punishment on his only son, Bob. It must have been a tough decision for him. But he's now living his life positively. Seeing John, I've decided in my heart to live my own life positively from now on.
Huh. There's no way I can do that.
Absolutely not.
Isn't that a bit harsh to say?
Dealing with Alzheimer's is just too much hassle, you know?
I have my mother to take care of, right?
I pleaded with my husband to live together with my mother, who had developed Alzheimer's, but he flat out refused as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Growing up, my father passed away when I was young, and I was raised by my mother. I wanted to be of help to her in any way I could.
Yeah, right. Taking care of such a person is just unpleasant. We might as well put her in a really cheap facility or something, don't you think? What's with that dissatisfied look? Don't tell me, you haven't given up yet? Just give up, it's impossible.
Do these two even have a heart? Being rejected to this extent, even I couldn't help but feel down.
All right, I give up on living with my mother.
There you go.
You should have just said that from the start. But it's really sad to give up so easily, don't you think?
Poor Mom. I clenched my fists, channeling all my anger into them. 2 years later. Now, my mother-in-law has developed dementia.
We'll take care of her here, so you better take good care of her.
Why do I have to do that?
She's your mother.
The anger towards my own mother, which I had almost forgotten, exploded.
Don't get angry, all right? If you're going to talk like that, I have my own thoughts on the matter. I might just leave her in the mountains.
My husband and mother-in-law will definitely pay for everything they've done, including what they did back then. My name is Alice, and I'm turning 50 this year. I've worked hard as a housewife since marrying my husband John, a former coworker, following his wish. We wanted to have children, but it was not easy, and we even tried fertility treatments.
Let's not decide it's impossible just yet, let's give it a shot.
But what if it still doesn't work? What if everything ends up being a waste?
Don't worry about it. So, let's try together.
He hugged me gently, and I remember feeling really reassured. It was the moment I felt truly loved by my husband. We continued with the fertility treatments, and just before I turned 30, we were blessed with a daughter, Julia.
You did great.
Thank you.
From now on, let's do our best as a family of 3.
Yes. I couldn't help but cry tears of joy for the safe arrival of our daughter. My husband was happy too, thinking that we could finally be a happier family than ever before. But there was someone who cast a shadow on our family time. You finally had her. I was really worried about what we would do if you couldn't have children.
Hey, that's not something you should say.
Well, it's true, isn't it? What value does a woman have if she can't even have children properly? Even though our newborn daughter was right there, my mother-in-law still hurled such heartless words at me. This wasn't the first time she treated me this way. It started when I first went to meet them for marriage introductions.
So you're Alice?
Nice to meet you. Feeling nervous, my mother-in-law hit me with a shocking statement. You kind of have a poor vibe, but what do your parents do?
My father passed away when I was little. Now, my mother works part-time.
Her expression turned even more severe than before.
I see, that explains a lot.
Excuse me? Her stern face suddenly turned into laughter. I was taken aback, but my husband immediately came to my rescue.
It doesn't matter, does it? Besides, we're in the same boat.
His father also passed away from cancer when he was in high school.
You know, my father was a high earner, so he left us a lot of money.
Unlike you. I was filled with anxiety about becoming a part of this family. However, I made up my mind when my husband held my hand tightly. In the end, we decided to get married, but as time went by, my mother-in-law's outrageous behavior escalated.
What brings you here today? Is it bad that I came to visit?
No, not at all. My mother-in-law started coming over unannounced after my daughter started kindergarten. That would have been fine, but she started treating me like a maid because she wanted to play with my daughter. What on earth have I done to her? Nothing, really. She probably just enjoys bullying me.
Oh dear, we're out of snacks. Alice, could you go buy some?
Excuse me?
Why are you so surprised?
I can't leave right now, so you go. Looking at my daughter, I could tell she wanted to go with me. Maybe she understood her grandmother's true nature even at her young age. I was reluctant to leave them alone together. Spending too much time with her could be a bad influence, I worried.
Julia seems like she wants to go too.
What are you talking about?
Julia wants to play with me. Julia, let's play when I come back, okay?
Julia just nodded silently. After that, my mother-in-law started coming over when Julia was not around. Especially during weekdays when my husband was not at home. She must be really mean to deliberately choose such times.
Today, I came to teach Alice what being a wife is all about.
I had a bad feeling about this. All I could wish for was her to leave as soon as possible. I didn't want to be in the same space with her for a single second.
First, you should clean and do the laundry until I say it's okay.
Understood. I thought it was better not to resist and just followed her instructions. I decided to play along until my mother-in-law was satisfied. After finishing all the chores, I reported back to her.
The cleaning and laundry are done.
I looked at the living room in astonishment.
Done? What do you mean by done?
Look at this place. The living room, which I had just cleaned, was filled with trash. At that moment, I understood. My mother-in-law had deliberately scattered the trash. To trouble me.
Just for goodness sake, you can't even clean properly. Maybe you were raised badly. Stop playing dumb and get to it.
I was angry at her actions, but I held back my rage and started cleaning again. Once I finished cleaning the living room, she spoke to me again.
Alice. It's not just cleaning, you can't even do the laundry properly. Look, everything is covered in mud.
The laundry was hanging on the balcony, and there was no mud in sight. She had deliberately dirted it. Until now, I had tried to deal with this on my own, but I realized that it was impossible. I decided to talk to my husband about my mother-in-law's actions.
My mom? Got it. I'll talk to her too.
Really? Thank you. Thanks to my husband's intervention, my mother-in-law stopped coming to our house. I was finally able to have some peace for a while. All the stress from being bullied by her seemed to lift off my shoulders. However, this peace was short-lived.
You really had the nerve to tattle on me last time. How dare a daughter-in-law stand up against her mother-in-law like that? You've got guts. Please, just stop.
Then I reported back to my husband again. And just in time, my mother-in-law came back again. It was a repeated game of cat and mouse. After years of this, my husband eventually stopped saying anything to his mother. Before I knew it, I was already 48 years old. My daughter, Julia, is now in college and living on her own.
I'm gonna visit my parents' house today. Take care.
It had been a long time since I had been back home. Trying to contain my excitement about seeing my mom, I headed to my parents' house. I had been feeling tired recently because of the constant nagging from my mother-in-law. But I knew that seeing my mom would help relieve some of that stress.
Mom, I'm home.
There was no response from my mom, who should have been at home. Worried that something might have happened, I hurried to the living room and found my mom, slumped on the sofa.
Hey, what's wrong? Oh, why is Alice here? You came back home.
My mom, answering my question, seemed quite different from before. She was staring blankly at one point. This sight made me feel an indescribable sense of anxiety.
Why am I here? I told you I was coming home today. Did something happen? I've been forgetting things a lot recently. Forgetting things? Have you been to the doctor? Doctors? No, I haven't.
Starting to get seriously worried, I convinced my mom to go to the hospital. I had never hoped more that my fears would be unfounded. Even in the car on the way to the hospital, our conversation was sometimes off.
The test results show that your mother may have Alzheimer's. It hasn't progressed too far yet, but it could worsen rapidly in the future.
Alzheimer's. And this was just the beginning. Hearing about my mom's condition, my mind went blank. My mom, sitting next to me, was also in shock. Who could have imagined this would happen?
It's still in the early stages, but there are medications that can slow its progression.
Is there a cure? The doctor paused for a moment before answering. His expression somber. A terrible premonition overwhelmed me.
Unfortunately, with current medical technology, we can't completely cure it.
I see. I felt pushed to the brink of despair. But my mom, perhaps concerned about me, smiled at me. I had to fight back tears. If I cried now, I knew it would only worry her more. It's out of our hands now.
Doctor, may we go home for today?
Yes, that's perfectly fine.
We can also recommend facilities that provide nursing care when the time comes.
Thank you. We'll consider it. Sure, just let us know. I don't really remember how we got back. Once back at my parents' house, we started discussing what to do next. What should we do?
Anyone could end up like this. I'm fine.
But
I'm fine.
I decided to go back to my husband. All the way home, I kept thinking about what I could do for my mom. Before I knew it, I was at the front door of my house.
Hey, what's up? Why the long face?
Actually, today. I shared today's events with my husband.
Alzheimer's? You're kidding.
It's true. It seems it's still in the early stages though.
What are we gonna do now?
I'm not sure yet. But I'm thinking of checking on her regularly.
That might be a good idea. I'll try to show up as much as I can too.
I was greatly comforted by my husband's words. He made me feel like I was not alone. I felt thankful once again that I married this man. From then on, my husband and I both went to see my mom. How are you doing?
John, you came all this way. I'm on medication now, so I'm okay.
That's good to know. If there's anything troubling you, please let me know.
Thank you.
I was nothing but grateful for my husband's concern for my mom. However, this did not last long. I went to see my mom on the weekends, sometimes even staying overnight. Apparently, my husband wasn't too happy about that.
I'm going to see Mom again today. What about you?
Then, he sighed. Again? Isn't it about time you stopped? What do you mean? Going there every week isn't going to make a difference. I was angry at his words. He had been so concerned about my mom before. That's not true. But Alzheimer's isn't curable, is it? And of course, it was at that moment that my mother-in-law decided to show up. Is something wrong? Look, I told you before that Alice's mom has Alzheimer's, right? She insists on going again. I see. That must be tough. My mother-in-law looked at me and smirked. I didn't want to see that malicious look on her face. You think so too, don't you? Alice will eventually be forgotten anyway. That's true. She's working so hard for nothing. Unable to bear their attitudes any longer, I left the house. Either way, I couldn't bring such people around my mother. From then on, I decided to visit her alone. But even so, I had someone on my side. I'll go with you next time. But aren't you busy? Grandma has always been so kind to me, unlike some people. My daughter had never liked my mother-in-law. Maybe it was because she saw me being bullied by her since she was little. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was good to have my daughter with me. My mom seemed happy to see her granddaughter. We visited her several more times. And though my husband and mother-in-law kept making sarcastic remarks, I ignored them. It was at that moment. Can you come to the hospital? I have something to talk to you about. Got it. I'll be right there. I understood immediately. A call like this must mean that my mom's condition isn't good. Sorry for calling you in today. And how is my mom? About the test results from last time, frankly, they're not good. She's on medication, but it seems to be less effective than before. What does that mean? In the near future, she might even forget her family. So, I suggest considering the facility we talked about before. Maybe that's the best for my mom right now. Give me a moment to think, please. Of course. Here's a brochure if you'd like to take a look. Thank you. I had noticed that her forgetfulness was getting worse recently. Our memories didn't match up more and more. I was torn. Is it really okay to put my mom in a facility? Then, I made up my mind and went home. What? No way, that's impossible. Don't talk like that. Alzheimer's is such a hassle. We already have my mother living with us, you know? I arrived home and immediately begged my husband to let my mom move in, but he flat out refused. My mother-in-law was there as usual today, but that doesn't matter. I still haven't repaid my mom for raising me. Right. Taking care of someone like that is unpleasant. You might as well put her in a cheap facility. What's with that dissatisfied look? You haven't given up yet? It's impossible, so just give up. Do these two even have hearts? I couldn't help but feel down after being rejected like this. Fine. I give up on living with my mom. See? You should have just said so from the start. But giving up this easily is just sad for your mom. I clenched my fists as if to pour all my anger into them. I immediately opened the brochure I had received and called them. Soon after, preparations were underway, and in a week, she was able to move into the facility. I'm sorry. I really wanted to live together. It's okay. I can't trouble you any more than this. Don't say that. I'm not troubled. Plus, I'll come to check on you again. At this age, I realized that I'm still a child. Time passed, and the disease progressed. 2 years later, with the progression of Alzheimer's and her weakening internal organs, my mom passed away. I found out later that she had instructed the staff to keep quiet about her condition, not wanting to worry me and my daughter. I knew it'd come to this. It's not like it's Alzheimer's or anything. Either way, it's all the same. You're gonna work for this house from now on. Despite my mom's passing, my husband was completely unchanged. My mother-in-law didn't even come to my mom's funeral. Afterwards, I, eager to escape their clutches as soon as possible, somehow persuaded my husband and started working part-time. I wanted to save up funds while I could, planning to leave this house eventually.
There's something I want to talk about.
It was a month after my mom had passed away.
Want to talk about what? Actually, my mom's had dementia for a bit now.
Dementia? I acted surprised, but that wasn't the case. It was probably payback time for my mother-in-law. But she wouldn't understand that now.
Also, we're gonna take care of her here, so you better look after her properly.
He dared say this after rejecting my offer to take care of my mother. I owed him no such favor.
Why do I have to do that? She's your mom.
The anger towards my mother that I had almost forgotten exploded.
There's no need to get angry. If you're gonna talk like that, I have my thoughts too.
I'll abandon her in the mountains. I'd make my husband and mother-in-law pay for everything they'd done, including what happened just now. I swore to my mother. I decided to deliberately accept my husband's proposition. He complained, saying I should have agreed from the start, but I didn't care.
Mom's gonna live with us starting today, so please. I understand.
Enjoy it while it lasts. And then, my mother-in-law arrived. It was my first time seeing her since she developed dementia, and she was clearly different. She seemed like someone else.
I gotta head out now, so I'm leaving the rest to you.
You can count on me. I hadn't expected an opportunity to come so soon. After confirming my husband had left, I took my mother-in-law out.
Where are we going? Somewhere really fun. So let's go together, okay?
Okay. I quickly prepared the car and got my mother-in-law in. We headed to a secluded park on a small hill. It was a distance she could manage with her stamina.
We're here, at the fun place.
I left my mother-in-law at the park and drove to the office to get a divorce form. I quickly went back home, signed the form, and left the rest to fate. I then returned to my parents' house. About 2 hours later, my husband called.
What the hell is going on?
What do you mean?
There's a divorce form and my mom's gone.
He was panicking. I could tell, even over the phone. It was laughable.
I can't live with you any longer, let's get a divorce. What? What are you suddenly talking about?
So, please take care of the rest.
What about Mom?
She was gone before I realized, and I'm searching for her now.
Why don't you go look for her instead of staying there?
I told my husband I was looking for her, but of course, I wasn't. He had to figure out things on his own. I drove to my parents' house with a smile. Upon arrival, I prayed in front of my mother's portrait. 2 hours later, my husband called.
Did you find your mom? Yeah, I found her.
I could tell from his voice that he was quite exhausted.
Where are you?
I've been looking around.
You're coming back, right?
Why would I? I told you, we're getting a divorce.
I haven't forgotten what you and your mother did to me, and I have no intention of forgiving you.
Then, my husband got angry.
Is that so? Then don't ever come back here.
Don't worry, I wasn't planning to. Soon after, we officially got a divorce. 6 months later, I landed a job at the company where my mother used to work. Everyone welcomed me, and I quickly got accustomed to the job. I was relaxing for the first time in a while when my smartphone rang.
Hello?
It was my ex-husband.
My mom passed away the other day. You were right, I was wrong.
I'm sorry to hear that.
She's gone now, can we give it another shot?
My ex-husband was completely out of touch. Why on earth should I get back together with him now?
Do you even hear yourself? Even without your mother, there's 0% chance of us getting back together. I'm sorry if this sounds harsh, but please don't drag me back into your life. I'm begging you, you're all I have.
Any feelings I had for my ex-husband were long gone. I had decided to live on my own.
Just live the rest of your life in regret. Goodbye.
I hung up the phone and deleted his contact information. I could finally feel completely at peace. I didn't want that man to disturb me any longer. I had already started walking down a new path in life.
She hit on me, and I just couldn't turn her down, you know? I guess I'm just that charming. But man, being with a younger woman was incredible. I never thought she'd get pregnant so quickly, though. Still, it's family, and I'm not planning to take anything from my son. We're probably gonna end up living together, which I'm actually looking forward to. It took me a moment to understand what Jerry was talking about as he spoke on the phone with a friend. I didn't fully grasp the situation, but the pale face of my son, Ethan, right in front of me, gave it away.
What? I seriously don't get it. This is really happening, isn't it?
Ethan muttered, not asking anyone for confirmation. I couldn't find the words to respond. But I couldn't just go on living without knowing everything. After finding out everything, Ethan began plotting his revenge. Determined to send Jerry to hell, I decided to fully support him. My name is Linda Green. I'm 46 years old. Living with my husband Jerry, our son Ethan, and our daughter Jessica, it's a family of 4. Currently, I'm working part-time in an administrative role at a local company. I've been with this company since I graduated high school, took a break for childbirth and childcare, but started working again once the kids didn't need so much attention. I have good relationships with my colleagues at work, and my family life is harmonious. While it's a rather ordinary life, I've come to feel strongly that this is the happiest way to live. In the midst of such a life, if I dare say there's a complaint, it might be about my husband, Jerry. Jerry turned 50 this year. Unlike me, he's an active person who seeks thrilling experiences, often saying, "I can't stand being at home all the time." He's always loved going out and has had a variety of hobbies since his younger days. When the kids were little, he would take us fishing, camping, or hiking, and we even played golf together as a family. To outsiders, Jerry seemed like the ideal father, and we were often envied for it. But what you see from the outside isn't everything. While he is curious and enthusiastic, Jerry also gets bored very easily. He always goes all in when starting something new. Buying expensive fishing rods, camping gear, and golf equipment. Every time he picks up a new hobby, he spends hundreds of dollars to get all the gear, only to use it a few times before it gets stowed away. Never to see the light of day again.
Dad, I want to go fishing again. Dad, I want to go camping.
Even when the kids ask him like this, once he's lost interest, he doesn't bother. "Nah, I'm over that," he'd say, and that would be the end of it. He might have seemed like a good father to those looking from the outside, but Jerry was really just doing what he wanted to do. He wasn't doing these activities with the kids or me, he was making us go along with whatever he felt like doing at the time. Eventually, the kids caught on to this.
"Hey, let's all go get scuba diving licenses during summer break this year."
Even when Jerry would suggest something like this, the kids would respond, "No way. You'll just quit once it gets fun, or besides, getting gear for all 4 of us costs a lot of money. You're just gonna stop using it after a while." So, they stopped going along with his proposals. I think the kids have a point. I feel the same way. But Jerry just gets mad at them. What the hell? I was thinking it'd be nice for all of us to do something together. He'd grumble and complain, acting more like a child than the actual children. When our younger daughter, Jessica, reached middle school, Jerry practically stopped getting any attention from the kids at all. However, that didn't mean he settled down. Now, believe it or not, he started getting into gambling. But unlike his previous hobbies, gambling didn't require a large initial investment. And surely, he'd get bored of it soon enough. I decided it was actually convenient for me if he would just go out quietly by himself on his days off. I didn't know how long this hobby would last, but I chose to just keep an eye on him.
"Hey Linda, listen to this. I won $1,000 today. I'm pretty awesome, huh?"
Luckily, Jerry didn't end up losing a significant amount of money. Sometimes he'd win $1,000, other times $300, or a few tens of dollars. The amount varied, but he seemed to be winning overall.
What?
$1,000? That's amazing.
It makes working seem kinda stupid, doesn't it?
He would joke like this from time to time, devoting his time to his new hobby. But after half a year of gambling,
Jerry stopped bragging about his winnings.
Haven't heard about you winning recently. Not doing so well?
When I asked, he would boastfully reply, "What are you talking about? I'm a genius. I keep winning every time I go. It's just too much hassle to report it every time. Besides, I'm saving it as my secret stash." Well, I had things to say, but he was diligently going to work in gambling within reason, creating a secret stash for himself. I couldn't really say anything about it. I was worried, but he had never stuck with a hobby for more than a year. I thought he would get bored of it soon. However, contrary to my expectations, Jerry didn't quit gambling. He even made some friends and continued his gambling sprees on weekends for over a year. One day, while I was feeling somewhat fed up with Jerry, I went shopping at the supermarket. As usual, I tried to pay with the card we use for living expenses when the cashier told me, "I'm sorry, but the transaction isn't going through." Thinking the card's magnetic strip might be damaged, I quickly took out my personal card and said, "Sorry about that. Please use this one," and completed the payment. The living expenses card was a family card issued under Jerry's name, with withdrawals coming from his bank account. So, I needed to talk to him about it, and I brought it up that night.
Today at the supermarket, they told me my card wasn't working. They said the magnetic strip might be damaged, so could you please take care of the reissuance process for me?
And with that, I handed my card over to Jerry. However, days went by and Jerry did nothing about it. Feeling suspicious, I decided to call the credit card company myself, but they told me they couldn't proceed unless Jerry called them. Reluctantly, I continued using my own card while waiting for the reissuance. Then one day, I noticed a letter from the credit card company. Wondering when Jerry had finally taken care of it, and desperate because I was out of funds, I assumed it was my new card and opened the letter without confirming with Jerry first. But when I saw the contents, my eyes widened in shock.
The payment didn't go through? What does this mean?
It was a letter urging me to deposit money into the account. The account they were referring to was the one Jerry's salary gets deposited into. There was no way the payment couldn't have gone through. I rushed to check the balance. To my astonishment, there was only $300 left. There were signs of multiple withdrawals made with a card at the ATM. It was undeniable. This was Jerry's doing. Trying to contain my fury, I went back home. And that day, as soon as Jerry came back, I lashed out at him.
What were you thinking?
Whoa!
What's all this about all of a sudden? Don't play dumb. There's hardly any money left in the account. What are we supposed to live on this month?
At my words, Jerry laughed it off evasively.
I lost a bit gambling, so I borrowed some. It's not like I touched our savings or anything. It won't make much of a difference, right?
And unbelievably, he said it without a shred of guilt. I was furious at Jerry's nonchalant attitude. The card wasn't even demagnetized. It was just temporarily blocked, so it was unusable for a while. Jerry knew this, so he didn't bother with the reissuance process. Even if he had told me honestly, it's not something I could easily forgive, but the fact that he kept silent and even tried to deceive me made me feel betrayed.
No more gambling, okay?
I said, and for once, Jerry looked annoyed.
What's that all about? I've been losing a bit these past few months, but I'm still ahead overall. Just quit while you're ahead.
He retorted like a child, wearing a sulky expression, and I scolded him once again. After that, Jerry's attitude worsened.
What a boring family. You won't even let me do what I enjoy.
He would mutter complaints and treat me like an enemy for forbidding him from gambling. But it would be too late if our financial situation got out of hand. Our kids were still students. There were tuition fees to think about. Our marital relationship couldn't be described as good anymore, and Jerry was probably bored with our married life, but divorce wasn't a simple option. Hoping to maintain a harmonious home at least until our children were grown, I spent my days trying to keep Jerry in a good mood. Then, a happy event occurred in our family. Ethan, who had graduated from high school and was working, had found a girlfriend and wanted to introduce her to me. Her name was Mandy. She was the same age as Ethan, had moved from the countryside and was working in the city. Apparently, they met through a friend of hers who worked at the same place. A new breeze seemed to blow into our family, and I welcomed Mandy with open arms.
The meals made by you are so delicious.
Mandy was a really good girl. We would sometimes eat together, and she would always say that. She seems to go cafe hopping with Jessica as well, and it didn't take long for her to blend in with our family. Of course, Mandy was also very good to Jerry. She would keep him company during his evening drinks, and she's the only one in our house who would listen to Jerry's stories. It seems like Jerry has taken a liking to her, saying, "I wish Ethan would marry Mandy and make her my daughter-in-law." Of course, I totally agree with that idea. Ethan and Mandy were only 20, but it seems like they were seriously thinking about their future. Then, after a while, they informed us that they had decided to get married at the age of 23.
Why 23?
I simply wondered. Then Ethan said, "I think getting married costs money. I want to give Mandy the wedding she dreams of, so we thought we'd save up money together until then." I was utterly impressed by these words, not expecting such maturity from a 20-year-old. Of course, we have enough savings to give them a wedding. But Ethan doesn't want to rely on us. He'd rather be the one to support others, he said. Even though the wedding was still a long way off, I was moved to tears. To signify that Mandy was already halfway part of our family, we decided to start referring to her not as Ethan's girlfriend, but as his fiancée. However, after some time, Ethan told us that Mandy was pregnant. Just the other day, they said they would marry at 23, so this sudden news took me by surprise.
Pregnant. I've heard both of your feelings on this, so that's not the problem, but...
I told Ethan, but his face remained clouded.
Is something wrong? But Mandy can't be pregnant.
Ethan muttered reluctantly in response to my question. I couldn't grasp the intent behind his words and tilted my head in confusion. As if to add insult to injury, Ethan continued.
I was on a business trip when she would have conceived. So, it can't be my child.
Ethan's cry of anguish pierced my heart. Was Mandy unfaithful? But I can't see her as that kind of girl. Ethan said it himself.
But Mandy insists she absolutely didn't cheat. I just don't know what to do anymore.
Ethan was holding his head in his hands. Seeing him like this, I decided that I wanted to talk to Mandy, so I asked Ethan if he could arrange a meeting. I decided to keep quiet about it with Jerry until things became clear. It's a delicate issue, and I couldn't see how Jerry stepping in would resolve anything. However, the truth came out in an unexpected way. One evening, Jerry didn't come to the dinner table.
Ethan, could you call your dad for me?
I couldn't leave what I was doing, so I asked Ethan to call Jerry. Ethan went to call him, but after a while, neither of them came back.
I wonder what happened.
Leaving the preparations to Jessica, I headed to the bedroom. There, I saw Ethan, standing with a pale face.
What's wrong?
When I spoke to him, he gestured with his finger on his lips for me to be quiet, signaling something was wrong. As I approached the bedroom door, I could hear Jerry's voice inside.
Well, now I'm set for life.
It seemed like he was on the phone. Jerry talking on the phone? It must be with one of his shady friends he met through gambling. I looked at Ethan's face. If it was just a phone call, he could have just said Dad's on the phone and come back. Judging by his complexion, this was surely no ordinary call. And the next sentence made that crystal clear. I couldn't say no when she came on to me. I do have a way with the ladies, you know.
And man, young women are the best. I never thought she would get pregnant so quickly, but hey, she's still family, right? I don't plan on taking anything from my son. It's just that we're gonna live together now, and I'm looking forward to it.
For a moment, I didn't understand what he was talking about, but looking at Ethan's pale face, I quickly caught on.
What? I mean, it's really that, isn't it?
Ethan mumbled, not needing confirmation from anyone. I couldn't say a word. After that, I took Ethan and left the house. I didn't think it was a good idea to let Ethan and Jerry be together. Jessica looked puzzled, but I asked her to have dinner with Jerry and immediately headed to Mandy's place. Ethan, Linda. Mandy greeted us with a worried look on her face. It seemed like she and Ethan had been arguing about the pregnancy. Feeling the tense atmosphere, I decided to speak up.
Mandy, I want you to tell us the truth. Who is the father of the child in your belly?
Mandy then began to sob uncontrollably. She seemed to have difficulty speaking, but after I promised her that I wouldn't get mad no matter what, she slowly started to open. Actually, Jerry is. Despite saying he wouldn't get angry, I felt a deep anger well up inside me as Mandy mentioned that person. While I thought to myself what he could have possibly done, I also thought that Mandy was just as much to blame for responding to him. But I was mistaken. Ethan can't have children. He said if you want kids, it's better if they're blood related to him. He said that it doesn't change the fact that we're family. Both Ethan and I were lost for words after hearing this. Of course, there was no such fact. Mandy just kept crying after that. What an awful situation. Incredibly, Jerry had deceived Mandy, Ethan's fiancée, and had taken advantage of her. The biggest victim in this situation was Mandy. The distrust I had for her disappeared in an instant. I couldn't believe that she was lying. It's a delicate issue, so I thought we should keep it a secret from Ethan. If Jerry and I stay quiet, everyone else will be happy. Those words made my blood boil with anger towards Jerry. I'm sure Ethan felt the same way. I can't forgive him. I'll make sure he pays for this and ends up in hell. I nodded in agreement to Ethan's words. And so, I decided to fully support Ethan's plan to bring Jerry down. But first and foremost, we needed to take care of Mandy. Both Ethan and I apologized to her. She told us not to do it, saying it wasn't necessary, but we knew this wasn't something an apology could fix. I believe the child is innocent. But please, just give me a little time to think about what to do next. That's what Mandy said. Of course, we respected her decision. We asked her to contact us immediately if anything happened, and then we left her house.
We're back.
Oh, you're late. Where have you been? Jessica and I already ate. When Ethan and I got back home, Jerry acted as if nothing had happened and said that. Ethan looked like he was ready to jump on Jerry any second, but he held himself back and forced a smile. I just wanted to have a talk with Mom, you know. Dad, you've been banned from gambling, right? I felt sorry for you. While saying that, Ethan approached Jerry with a smile. Right? You understand, don't you, Ethan? You can't really live without a hobby, right?
Well, yeah. You saying that made me think it over, Ethan. But don't go overspending, okay?
Jessica was the only one unaware of our plan, so she exclaimed, "What? Are you out of your mind?" showing her frustration. But that only made Jerry more confident. If it's 3 against 1, give up. Finally, gambling is back on the table. Just as expected, Jerry was overjoyed. He went gambling the very next day. During that time, we explained everything to Jessica. As expected, she was speechless and showed more disdain for Jerry than anyone else. I can't believe it. How can someone like that be a father? I feel so sorry for Mandy. Jessica said, crying. And from that day on, Jessica joined our plan. The plan was simple. Just let Jerry waste all his money on gambling. We, his family, knew his personality better than anyone else. Surely he would secretly dip into the living expenses soon. So I moved all the living expenses and savings to another account. I thought we would move on to the next step of the plan after 2 months, but Jerry's spending spree was several times faster than I had expected. It only took 3 weeks for him to hit rock bottom, and he started dipping into the living expenses. And soon, that account was also empty. What are you thinking? This is the second time. What about Jessica's college funds? How are we going to handle this? I yelled at Jerry. Jerry said desperately, I didn't think it would run out so quickly. I'll get it back soon, just another $200. No, $100 is fine. Lend it to me from our savings. Even though I knew it would come to this, my anger toward Jerry, who really did use up all the money so quickly, was genuine, not an act.
You're not showing any remorse at all. What on earth are you thinking?
With anger and frustration bringing tears to my eyes, Jerry widened his eyes in surprise.
You've always been like this, only thinking about yourself. I thought I could endure until the kids were grown up, but I can't take it anymore.
With that, I slammed the divorce papers on the table. Jerry finally turned pale at the sight of those papers.
Isn't this a bit too much?
You're joking, right? He tried to calm me down, but I felt no sympathy for Jerry at all.
Jessica will stay with me. Since this house is in your name, I'll be leaving.
Hey, calm down. It's just gambling.
Just gambling? That's just the tip of the iceberg. I hate everything about you.
Jerry looked truly desperate now, seemingly realizing the gravity of the situation for the first time. But a mere realization like that was far from enough. My divorce from Jerry was just the first step of this plan. Jerry was whining until the end, but Ethan told him.
Dad, you used to say our family was boring because you couldn't do what you wanted.
Now you can do anything you want, you're free. You can do anything you like now. You're a free man.
I guess you're right.
Jerry, easily swayed, agreed to the divorce with Ethan's encouragement. Later, Jerry found out that assets had been transferred to a separate account for living expenses, and he was furious. I was just safeguarding the money. I don't see why I'm being yelled at.
You better split that money in half.
And he arrogantly said that.
I gave you the house, didn't I? So, if you sell the house, you have to split that money too. And of course, the fishing rods, camping gear, anything that can be turned into cash, you're gonna sell.
Well,
it's only fair, right?
Jerry was at a loss for words. He certainly didn't want to sell the house, and even though he had no plans to use them, he didn't want to part with things like his fishing rods. In the end, I took all the savings. With that money, I rented an apartment and started living with Jessica. I'm an adult, I'm gonna stay here, Ethan said, seeming content. But that's not the real story. Ethan said he would continue living in the house to report to us about Jerry's descent into misery. After that, Jerry slowly started going downhill, as if he was descending a staircase. Whether it's the stress from the divorce, or the sense of freedom from no longer having anyone nagging him about his gambling, he started going to gamble every day. It used to be just on the weekends, but now it seems like he's made a routine out of going after work, losing, and then coming home.
Oh, hey Dad, welcome back.
Ethan greeted him as if nothing was wrong. I'm home.
What's for dinner?
Nothing.
I just got home too.
What are you eating then?
This? It's beef soup Mom made for me.
And while showing off the food I had given him, Jerry would resort to eating bread. The look on Jerry's face as he enviously watched Ethan eat.
Give me a bit.
After a while, Jerry would always ask, and Ethan would always respond, absolutely not. This went on every day. Then, about a month later, Jerry, eating his usual bread, said to Ethan,
Ethan, I'm sorry. If you're gonna live here, could you pitch in some money?
What?
You know, for utilities and stuff.
Jerry looked serious, but Ethan caught on quickly.
You ran out of money, didn't you?
No, not like that but... Jerry said, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Ethan smirked and stood up.
I've been contributing every month. You used all that up, didn't you?
What?
I can't give any more. If you keep asking for money, I'm gonna move out.
True to his word, Ethan had been contributing ever since he got a job. Even after we left, he kept depositing money into the household account.
I forgot. My bad.
You can stay here, son. Jerry desperately tried to keep Ethan from leaving. But Ethan, laughing, replied,
You know, Mom used to handle all the household chores, so I pitched in. But when I think about it, you don't do anything, and I'm the one doing the housework. So, shouldn't you be the one paying the utilities? Why am I even contributing?
At those words, Jerry was speechless. The only reason the house remained tidy was because of Ethan. Seeing the man he despised the most must have been hard for Ethan, yet he was still determined to push Jerry to his limit.
Yeah, well,
Jerry seemed to nod as his eyes darted back and forth, but Ethan said,
well, I don't really care since I'm leaving anyway.
Ethan managed to playfully toy with Jerry while surely inflicting damage on him. Jerry frantically tried to stop Ethan, but Ethan brushed him off and left him behind. What happened afterward goes without saying. I started getting frequent calls from neighbors who didn't know I had left.
The house seems to be in a mess. Have you gone somewhere? Is Jerry okay? He seems to be in quite a bad state.
From these calls, I could immediately imagine the kind of life Jerry was leading. There were also eyewitness accounts like, some scary people came by. Should I call the police? I was truly worried about what was going on, but it seemed that Jerry had borrowed money from loan sharks. That meant he really must be out of money. As expected, I received a call from Jerry.
Linda, help me. You're the only one I can rely on now.
Jerry, who couldn't even do household chores and could only ask for money. I had no intention of helping such a person, but I decided to contact him.
I have something to talk to you about too. I'll be at your house tomorrow.
Upon receiving my message, Jerry replied, I'll be waiting. The next day, I headed to the house. Ethan, Jessica, Mandy, and an additional man. 5 of us went to the house.
Oh. Did everyone come together? I've been waiting.
As Jerry pressed the doorbell, he greeted us with an unnaturally broad smile. However, his smile faded upon seeing the man.
Who might you be?
Then the man spoke up. Nice to meet you.
My name is Young, and I'm a lawyer.
I'm here to discuss the matter where all of you have been victimized.
Victimized?
Yes. The infidelity against Linda, the defamation against Ethan, and the sexual assault against Mandy.
What?
Upon hearing those words, Jerry's face turned pale, he started to sweat profusely, and let out a bizarre scream. Let's talk inside, shall we?
No. I have an errand to run right now.
Sorry for the inconvenience, even though you came all this way. Jerry finally seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation as he noticed our stern gazes. The next moment, he shockingly tried to run away.
Don't you dare run!
Ethan caught Jerry in his tracks. And then he said,
We know everything you did. If you're an adult, you better take responsibility.
Intimidated by Ethan, Jerry shrank in size. After that, it was the lawyer's turn. Jerry, who couldn't rebut anything Suzuki said, just kept nodding while we watched him with disdain. No need to mention how I and Mandy felt about him. Also, you said that Ethan was sterile. Even if you don't spread rumors, telling that to his fiancée could potentially ruin his life. That's defamation.
That is.
Make sure you reflect on your actions. Then, the 3 of us demanded $100,000 in damages. Mr. Young explained to Jerry the breakdown and the reason behind the amount.
There's no way I can pay that.
Jerry pleaded and cried to Suzuki and me. That's when Jessica spoke up.
Maybe you can get that amount if you sell this house?
That is. We'll make sure you pay in full. Jerry had no money left. He was even in debt. He probably had no choice but to give up the house. Jerry cried and wailed miserably, apologizing profusely. However, there was no way we could forgive him. That's disgusting. Jessica looked at Jerry as if she was looking at trash, and Ethan also showed his disgust openly. Pay up quickly.
And don't you ever come near us again. If you can't do that, we're ready to press charges regarding the situation with Mandy, just so you know.
We left Jerry there, crying alone in his filthy house filled with garbage, after dropping those words, and then we headed home. In the end, Jerry sold his house. He used the money to pay us for damages, and to pay back the loan sharks, which I heard about from Mr. Young. However, he ended up without a place to live, and didn't even have enough money to rent an apartment. There was no one to help him. Even his gambling buddies, who he called friends, weren't close enough to help him out. Now, he seems to be living in a motel, having borrowed money in advance from his salary at work. How long will he be able to live like that? If things continue this way, he will end up homeless. I thought Ethan dropped Jerry into hell with his plan, but thinking about it more, it feels like Jerry just carelessly fell into hell on his own. From now on, he will be forgotten by our family, and one day, he will probably just end his lonely life all by himself. After that, Mandy and Ethan got married.
The baby is innocent. I can't let Mandy get hurt any further.
Saying this, Ethan accepted Mandy's baby as his own child to raise. I wonder how much inner conflict he went through to make that decision. Mandy and I both cried at his words, but Ethan was the only one laughing alone. And then, Mandy successfully completed her pregnancy, and a healthy baby girl was born.
Doesn't she look like her mom?
Jessica immediately said that upon seeing the child. Ethan looks like me. And if she looks like me, that means, after a DNA test, it turned out that the baby was actually Ethan's. It seemed that Mandy's period had been off, and the baby was small, so the weeks had been miscalculated. Mandy, Jessica, and I all cried. However, Ethan, who had been holding himself together until then, cried more than anyone else when he learned the truth.
I will definitely make them happy. Both Mandy and this child.
That's what Ethan said. The next plan Ethan decided on was truly a wonderful thing. And I am planning to support him fully from now on. Even though I married Keith, I didn't get along well with my mother-in-law and her son, Shane. However, one day, through Shane, my mother-in-law invited me to go to Hawaii. I thought that through this trip, maybe I could get closer to them. I greeted the day with such faint hope. Before boarding, I entrusted my wallet to my mother-in-law, and then she handed me divorce papers.
What? Why? It's because you can't get along with Shane and me, right? Keith complained about you a lot.
He's fed up, you know. My mother-in-law sneered at me, who was in a daze, and then went to the boarding gate with my wallet. I looked at the divorce paper in disbelief, and my eyes widened. This is Shane's handwriting. I felt a surge of intense anger.
Enjoy my time with my real family. The fake mom can just sleep outside.
I replied with a smile to Shane, who sneered at me. Okay. Until now, I've been patient because I was a part of Keith's family. But I'm done. I will make them regret trampling on my feelings. I am Macy, a 50-year-old housewife. I work as a florist and, using my qualification in flower coordination, I also undertake decorating event venues and wedding reception halls. I divorced 10 years ago due to my husband's infidelity, and thought I was done with marriage, but then I met Keith, who runs an event planning company, 3 years ago and remarried him after a year of dating. Unlike my previous husband, Keith is not good at small talk and is not a fan of forced smiles, but he is sincere and serious. For me, who has lost both of my parents, he is a reassuring and important person when we are together. I cherish these happy days, but there was one thing that bothered me. Shane, the child from his previous marriage, still hasn't opened up to me. Of course, I tried to make an effort. As the person in charge of cooking, I first understood his food preferences, and to create common topics of conversation, I bought CDs of his favorite band and listened to them enough to be able to sing them at karaoke. If he mentioned a drama he watched, I watched the same drama, and when I heard that a lottery for his favorite streaming service started at a convenience store, I drew a lottery and gave him the prize as a gift. But it seems all of them missed the mark. You know, stop trying to win me over. I was truly shocked when he said this to me.
I'm not trying to win you over. I just want to get along.
When I pleaded, Shane grimaced deeply.
I'm not planning on becoming a family with you. Just leave me alone.
His dismissive tone stabbed me like a knife. What makes matters worse is that Shane acts friendly towards me in front of Keith. Come to think of it, even before we got married, when we went out together several times, Shane showed a friendly smile and talked to me in a friendly manner. So I was under the impression that we would get along after marriage. I was prepared that it would be difficult for an adult child to call me mom, but when Keith was not around, Shane called me even worse. Hey, old lady.
Refill the water in the fridge. Where are my socks?
He seems to switch between names depending on his mood.
You know, when are you going to learn our family's taste? My deceased mom was a much better cook. It's so annoying that you act like a mom even though you can't even cook properly.
He constantly nagged and made sarcastic remarks, so I couldn't take it anymore and asked him.
Shane, if there is anything I'm lacking, please tell me. I'll try to improve.
Then Shane, with a twisted smile, said,
Think for yourself. You've got a brain, don't you? It's because you're so stupid that you get cheated on.
He snapped at me as I fell silent.
You're just after Dad's money, aren't you? He should have chosen a younger and prettier woman. I really don't see what he sees in you.
I couldn't come up with a response when he pointed out my appearance. It's still a mystery to me why Keith, an actor-like figure, even if only an acquaintance through work, asked me out. One day, I overheard a conversation between Shane and his friend and learned that Shane had quit college and was just drifting around.
Shane told me he needed $5,000 for a training program, so I lent it to him.
Huh?
Did I say that? You haven't told your dad you quit college, have you? You better tell him straight.
That's when Shane glared at me with disdain.
Shut up. Just remember what'll happen if you tell Dad.
Does Shane want to talk about this himself? It's obvious that it would be better if he spoke directly rather than me telling Keith. After some hesitation, I decided not to tell Keith about Shane dropping out of college. I really wanted to talk to Keith about Shane's cold attitude towards me, but I didn't want to add to Keith's worries since he works late every night. After our marriage, Shane teamed up with my mother-in-law, who disliked me. My mother-in-law would pop by our house, a 30-minute drive away, and criticize how the cleaning wasn't up to par or how the meals were meager. One day, I was surprised to find her cooking dinner in the kitchen when I got home from work. Glancing at the trash bin, I saw the ingredients I had prepared earlier, thrown away mercilessly. She served beef and potato stew on the dining table, and started to have dinner facing Shane. Shane took a bite of the stew with a blissful expression.
Grandma's beef and potato stew is the best. Right?
She said, beaming with a smile.
Macy, why don't you learn to cook from Grandma? That way, you might be able to make decent meals. Poor Shane and Keith, having to eat terrible food every day. Leaving your husband and son to fend for themselves while you work all day, that's not what a good wife does. Keith is just too kind, letting you take advantage of him. If Grandma's house was closer, I'd go there for dinner every night.
I just couldn't comprehend her nerves, throwing away someone else's food and bad-mouthing others while enjoying a meal. And I only work part-time, so I get home in the early evening. I do all the housework during the week by myself to support Keith, who is busy. I just can't understand why I'm being criticized by my mother-in-law. In short, she's unhappy that her daughter-in-law works.
Why on earth did Keith remarry someone like you? He must have been tricked. He hasn't realized she's after his money. You think the same, don't you? Keith is a kind and stubborn man. I told him to marry a young lady from a prestigious family suitable for a company president, but he said he would choose his partner himself and wouldn't listen.
After bad-mouthing me for over 2 hours, my mother-in-law left, leaving only Keith's share of dinner behind. Reluctantly, I ate dinner with the side dishes I had in stock, when Shane looked down at me with pity in his eyes and smirked.
Grandma still really hates you, huh?
Seems like it.
Instead of just trying to please Dad, why don't you make an effort to be liked by your mother-in-law?
I was astounded by his nerve to say such a thing after stirring up trouble himself. But well, it's fine as long as my mother-in-law lives separately. The problem is Shane. Being so openly hostile, I couldn't help but feel we would never get along, which left me feeling down. That night, as usual, Keith was working overtime, so Shane and I silently had dinner together. While cleaning up after dinner, Shane unusually started a conversation.
Hey! What is it? Grandma invited me to go to Hawaii.
Let's all go together. I was taken aback.
Huh, are you talking to me? Can I come along?
Yeah.
When you go on a trip, you get to see a different side of people, So maybe you and I could get along better. That's what Grandma says, anyway.
Shane continued, his face flushing with embarrassment. My mother-in-law is the chairwoman of a group of companies run by the family. She's not living on a pension, but is still actively working, so she must have some financial cushion. I'm happy that she invited me on the trip, but more than that, I'm glad to see her and Shane making an effort to get closer to me. So, keep the third week of next month free, okay?
Got it, I'll take the time off.
That evening, when Keith came home from work and I told him about it, his voice dropped in disappointment.
I've got a business trip overseas that week. Then, should I turn them down?
No, go ahead. If I stop by Hawaii on my way back, we might be able to grab a meal together.
That would be nice. But you've been really busy, haven't you? Are you getting enough rest?
I voiced my concern, and Keith gave me a gentle smile. I'm fine, thank you. Keith knew that my mother-in-law didn't like me. To be invited on a trip by Mom, that's surprising. She can be stubborn and has a sharp tongue, but maybe she really does want to get along with Macy. Normally, you wouldn't want to go on a trip with someone you don't like. With that, I made up my mind. I'm going to get along with my mother-in-law and Shane in Hawaii. I'll turn our previously strained relationship into something we can laugh about later, closing the gap between us. The day of the Hawaii trip eventually arrived. Shane and I went to the airport with Keith. After seeing Keith off on his direct flight to Los Angeles, Shane and I waited in the lobby for a while until my mother-in-law, pulling her suitcase, appeared. When I thanked her for inviting me on the trip, she smiled brightly.
Hey, Macy. To avoid any trouble if you lose your wallet, how about you let me keep it for you?
Huh?
When we shop in Hawaii, I'm gonna cover everything, so you don't need it, right? Here, Shane too.
All right. Since Shane handed his wallet to his mother-in-law, I also took out my long wallet from my bag and entrusted it to her. She opened my wallet, nodded contentedly, and said,
You did bring your credit cards and bills.
Well, please take care of it. Putting my wallet in her bag, my mother-in-law exchanged a glance with Shane and smirked. I felt a sense of foreboding looking at their expressions.
And this, I was asked by Keith to give this to you. Could you open it right now?
Baffled, I opened the envelope that my mother-in-law handed to me. The moment I took out the contents, I felt like I was about to stop breathing.
A divorce notice? Why?
My mother-in-law grinned triumphantly.
You just couldn't get along with Shane and me. Keith has been complaining about you to me a lot.
I heard it too.
He said he's totally fed up with being around you.
I felt like I was about to collapse.
So, you're no longer needed.
Goodbye.
My wallet.
Ignoring my plea as if she hadn't heard it, my mother-in-law quickly left, pulling her suitcase behind her. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that Keith, who was kind and sincere, had been bad-mouthing me behind my back to his mother and Shane. Staring at the signature on the divorce notice, my eyes widened in realization. This is Shane's handwriting. It looks similar to Keith's, but the unique quirks in the handwriting gave it away. My feelings instantly shifted from devastation to intense anger. I was a fool to trust these two. I was so determined to get along with them through this trip.
What a shame, loser. Maybe you'll never get to go on an overseas trip ever again.
With a despicable smirk on his face, Shane spat out those words.
I'm gonna have fun with my real family. You, fake mother, can just sleep on the streets.
Smiling back at Shane, who was sneering at me, I responded cheerfully. All right. I glared at Shane's back until he disappeared into the crowd. Until now, I had been holding back and enduring because they were Keith's family. But no more. I'm going to make them regret trampling over my feelings. Left penniless at the airport, I had no intention of succumbing to Shane and my mother-in-law's harassment. I used the transit card app on my cell phone to take the train and calmly went home. Shane commutes to university by bicycle, and the only functions my mother-in-law uses on her cell phone are messaging and calls. So they must have overlooked it. When I got home and my anger had somewhat subsided, I made a phone call to a certain person. After that, I spent some time spacing out on the sofa. It was a pity that the trip to Hawaii fell through, but I could go anytime I set my mind to it. Besides, there was no way it would have been fun with such mean-spirited people. Comforting myself with these thoughts, I spent the day reading books and watching dramas online, taking it easy. Come to think of it, this was the first time I had been alone since getting married. Even when Keith was away on business trips, Shane was around, and my mother-in-law would drop by unannounced, so there was always someone at home. The trip may have been ruined, but I could spend the entire week alone, doing whatever I pleased without having to see Shane or my mother-in-law. In a way, this was a luxurious vacation. The next day, after finishing my chores early, I went out to see a movie and enjoyed shopping at the mall. In the afternoon, while I was drinking tea and watching TV at home, my cell phone suddenly rang. I had been expecting this call around this time. Not wanting to answer right away, I ignored it for a while, but then the message notification sound kept ringing one after another. Annoyed, I finally answered the phone reluctantly, only to be shouted at by Shane. "Hey, old lady, get to Hawaii right now." "What? Don't be ridiculous." "The sound from the TV? Are you at home?" "Grandma snatched my wallet and cards. How the hell am I supposed to get back?" "I have a transit app installed on my phone. It has my credit card information, and honestly, I'm not having much trouble." "Well, fine, just get over here." "Did something happen?" Shane, clearly agitated, responded with a rough tone. "I had a reservation at the hotel's 3-star restaurant, but they wouldn't let me in." "Oh really, why not?" I deliberately ask, feigning ignorance. "That damn owner said, unless Miss Macy is accompanying you, I'm afraid we must refuse service." Can you believe that? "So, you missed out on the beef fillet steak? That's a shame. The night view from the 36th floor is fantastic, and the meat is so tender and delicious." I couldn't help but laugh as I spoke to the ranting Shane. He was clearly not over it yet. "Even if I try to go to the other restaurants inside the hotel, the staff turns me away right at the door. The hotel staff is even whispering about us in English. It's so uncomfortable. I had no choice but to go out to the convenience store with Grandma, and we ended up having banana juice for dinner." "There's a supermarket outside the hotel, right?" "You know your stuff." Shane muttered suspiciously, but quickly got worked up again. "Damn it, why do I have to come all the way to Hawaii to be fed banana juice? Grandma got so angry she raised her blood pressure and had to lie down. This is all your fault." "I'm sorry, okay?" I had no idea why this was my fault, but I apologized to avoid further hassle. "It's your fault, so you should compensate us for the hotel and meal expenses. We had a terrible experience because of you, so it's only right that you pay." I couldn't help but laugh at this turn of events. "All right, fine." "Wait, really?" "Yes. However, you'll need to repay the $5,000 I lent you first. And make sure to do it before I file for divorce." "Oh, look at that, even after adding the hotel and meal expenses, there will still be change left over." Shane fell silent all of a sudden. He must have been planning to default on his debt to me in the chaos of the divorce. Not that I had any intention of divorcing in the first place. After a brief silence, Shane spat out resentfully. "Just give that $5,000 to your stepchild as a gift. Such a stingy woman. This is why poor people will always be poor." He really had the nerve to say whatever he wanted. At this point, I was so furious that I almost burst out laughing. Then I heard my mother-in-law's voice in the background. "Shane, are you talking to Macy?" "Yeah, Grandma. If you have something to say to her, better say it before we get divorced. We won't be seeing each other much longer." "Wait, let me talk to her. Macy, was your maiden name Smith?" she asked with a tense voice. "Yes, that's correct." I was expecting this question sooner or later. "Then, are you the daughter of the Smith Group?" "Yes. My brother took over." I could hear a strange noise from the other end of the line. It seemed like my mother-in-law was about to faint, and Shane was panicking.
Grandma, what's wrong? If you're not feeling well, you should rest.
No, I'm fine. So that's why we got the reservation at the popular restaurant so easily. She murmured, still in shock.
The Smith Group? That's the chain of restaurants popular with celebrities, right? They're a big hit overseas too.
There was a pause before Shane exclaimed.
Wait, she's the daughter of the Smith Group?
Seems like it.
I wasn't told that. Were you hiding it? What a nasty woman.
Shane was ranting again, and I coolly responded. That's strange. I'm sure I mentioned it during our pre-marriage introductions. Keith definitely knows about it. Oh, did I? I've been so forgetful lately, it's troubling. She must have been half listening to what was being said about her future daughter-in-law. I added. My father was the president of the Smith Group before he passed away. I inherited his wealth, so I haven't been in need of money. I didn't marry Keith for his money, just to be clear.
Oh, I see. Then why are you working as a florist? You could live off Keith's earnings. A wife should quit her job and devote herself to her husband and children. That's right. Oh, in that case, I'll take that $5,000 back. Man, I should have asked for more money from a rich person like you. I missed an opportunity there.
Both my mother-in-law and Shane seemed shocked at first, but quickly reverted to their usual selves, throwing snide remarks my way. The money I lent to Shane, I expect it to be returned. That's a separate issue, isn't it?
You haven't submitted the divorce papers, have you?
Yeah, well.
Then, invest $1 million in our company.
I was at a loss for words. What?
A wife should do at least that much. To you, it's just pocket change.
I can't do that, no way. Even if I had the money, I couldn't give it to you. When I firmly declined, my mother-in-law, who had been whining in a coddled voice, suddenly turned aggressive.
What's wrong with you, stingy woman? Don't you even want to be useful? I feel sorry for Keith for marrying someone like you.
My mother-in-law started talking nonsense.
Fine, when Keith comes to Hawaii tonight, I'm gonna fill his ears with all sorts of bad stuff about you. He's gonna despise you and want a divorce. I think I'll make up some stories too. If I say I was bullied, our simple-minded dad will probably believe it.
Shane gleefully added to my mother-in-law's rant.
If you won't give us the money, we don't need a snotty daughter-in-law like you. I'll just tell Keith that you wrote the divorce papers yourself. He's the serious type, he's scary when he's mad. I'm looking forward to tonight.
You don't have to wait until tonight. I've been listening here all along. Keith said to his mother over the phone, and the two of them were silent.
Eh? Keith, you were supposed to join us after your business trip. You said you were working until yesterday and would arrive in Hawaii tonight.
My panicked mother-in-law and Shane were taken aback as Keith responded. I got an image of the divorce papers from Macy, so I was surprised and called her back right away. I heard the story but was skeptical, so I rushed to finish my work and flew back home to listen to Macy and your conversation.
Eh? Dad, you're misunderstanding something. Grandma and I were the ones being treated horribly by her.
Shane said, trying to sound sweet again. Keith cut him off sharply. It's too late now. I've been listening to the whole conversation on speaker. Who's the horrible one here?
It's Macy's fault for complaining. What a nerve, she even prepared the divorce papers for us out of kindness, my mother-in-law retorted.
Oh, that's right. You two are flying back tomorrow, aren't you? I've already informed the police, I added.
Police? Why? We haven't done anything wrong.
Shane, you filled in the husband's section of the divorce papers, right? That's a forgery of a private document. You're getting arrested. My line sent the two of them into turmoil, starting a blame game over the phone.
Hey, Grandma. If I knew we'd get arrested, I wouldn't have done it. What are you going to do about this? That has nothing to do with me. Shane was the one who planned and executed this whole mean thing to Macy. What? Are you kidding me?
Shane exploded at my mother-in-law over the phone.
The conversation isn't over yet. Mom, you knew Shane dropped out of college and was blowing a lot of money at strip clubs, yet you turned a blind eye and even gave him an allowance, didn't you?
Yeah, so what?
What's wrong with giving my adorable grandson some money?
That's right. Shane chimed in, backing her up. Keith coldly told them.
As long as you're paying from your own pocket, it's fine. But if you're embezzling from the company, that's a serious crime.
That sounds bad, doesn't it? Shane sounded pale over the phone. Because, you see, I'm just a figurehead president. My salary is low.
Spare me, please. If I do that, I might lose the chance to take over my dad's company, you know?
Shane lamented, and Keith declared.
That's not gonna happen. I'm going independent.
After a moment, Shane exclaimed. Hey, that's not what we talked about. You said you'd make me your successor after I graduate from college.
Who was the one who dropped out after a year?
Damn it, okay, fine. I'll re-enroll in a different school and this time I'll study properly. So, keep your promise and let me be your successor.
Do you think I can entrust my precious company to a son who speaks so rudely to Macy?
I felt a warmth in my chest as I looked at Keith's angry profile. Keith was on my side. I felt rewarded for enduring their harsh words all this time.
I'm going to establish a different company and I'll cut ties with you too.
My mother-in-law's scream came from the other end of the phone. Either Shane snatched the phone from her or she grabbed it herself because she started rattling off rapidly. Keith, you're joking, right? Are you really going to prioritize that woman over your mother and your son, Shane? That's absurd, you'll definitely regret it. Please rethink this.
Considering how you and Shane treated Macy, I think this is fair. You guys don't care about me, you're just blinded by the profits I bring in.
Keith spoke sternly to his mother.
I care more about Macy, who isn't even related to me by blood but still cares for me, than a family like you guys.
Wait, don't hang up. I'll make sure Shane pays back his debt to Macy. So please, don't abandon just me. Keith hung up in the middle of her sentence and immediately blocked her phone number and messages.
Macy, even if they contact you, just ignore them.
Oh, okay.
Hey, are you really going to cut ties with them?
I asked anxiously, and Keith said with conviction.
It's okay. As I told my mom just now, I have no intention of getting along with a son or a mother who talks rudely to Macy. I'm sorry for making you endure it for so long. I was too caught up in work, and I know it was hard for you to talk to me. No, it's okay. From now on, I will support Keith in place of your mother and Shane.
Keith smiled gently at me. It seems that after my mother-in-law and Shane returned to Japan, they intended to stay in a hotel for a while to evade the police. However, Keith informed the police about my mother-in-law's favorite hotel, so they were caught quite easily. This time, since I noticed the forgery and didn't submit it to the office, it was only attempted forgery of a private document, and since it was their first offense, they were sent home after a stern warning. However, the news of their arrest spread throughout the neighborhood, and my image-conscious mother-in-law could no longer go outside. Also, since she embezzled company funds, she was removed from her position as president while they were traveling, and she became unemployed. When relatives went to check on my in-laws' house, they found my mother-in-law in filthy pajamas, holed up in a dark room, a far cry from her fashionable days. It was also discovered that Shane had borrowed money not only from his mother but also from several relatives to fund his nights out at strip clubs. Since everyone in the family knew that Keith had cut ties with them, they demanded their money back immediately, fearing they might get cheated. To prevent Shane from running away, one of the relatives decided to let him live in their house and work as a handyman at their company. They would take his salary before giving it to him and use it to repay his debts. Shane was under constant surveillance by his relatives, a thorn in his side. At work, he was bossed around by employees younger than him, bowing his head and asking for work. As he promised, Keith started his own company with a few trusted subordinates. I continued my job at the flower shop as usual, sometimes using my flower arrangement qualification to decorate venues. One day, my work gained popularity for its good taste, and I even started getting called to decorate the venues of Keith's clients. Knowing that my work contributes to the positive image of Keith's company makes me incredibly happy. I want to continue to work hard and take pride in my job, supporting Keith along the way.